This is Sharon Walker, and she'll be joining us today to talk about nature journaling. Sharon, would you like to say a few words?
Hi there. So Catherine, am I ready to begin or, okay, thank you so much. Well, I'm so honored to be a part of this community day. And I just thought I would give a little bit of information about how I got involved with nature journaling. For all of us, last year and in the last year and a half, we've been, I think, trying to have some sort of normal life. And I'd cleaned out all my closets and I'd cleaned out all my cupboards and I'd done everything, which I think many of us have done. Fortunately, I'm retired, so I'm not working. I've done photography for years and I do some art. And so I became aware of a nature journaling conference called Wild Wonder Nature Journaling. And so I signed up for that conference. And it was 5 days. It was a year ago in October. And I attended it. It was like 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, and it was intense. But I came away from that with this passion for nature journaling. It's not about fine art. It's about connecting with nature, connecting with yourself, becoming curious. This is what this presentation will be about. I'll be sharing some journals and sharing with you my journey for the past year. Catherine, so if we could have the first slide, please.
Yes, of course. And I just wanted to briefly mention these are our county parks that we're affiliated with, and the park that Sharon works with most is San Pedro Valley Park, which is right up here in Pacifica. And Sharon is an amazing artist, teacher, and volunteer for our department and a lot of other places in Pacifica. And so I just wanted to honor a lot of her achievements and things that she's done throughout her life, and appreciate her as one of our best friends, as a friend of San Pedro Valley Park, as a trail ambassador for Devil's Slide Trail, and many other things. She has a wealth of knowledge and she's always a joy to speak with. So here's your first slide.
Thank you, Sharon. We're so honored to have you.
Well, Catherine, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And Catherine, on the other hand, is just this amazing our interpretive ranger with San Mateo County Parks. And I've followed her journey for the past number of years, and I've seen her grow into this amazing ranger and wonderful woman. So it's wonderful working with her. So what is nature journaling? Nature journaling is collecting and organizing your observations and questions and connections and explanations on the pages of a notebook, and using words, pictures, and numbers. This is according to Muir Laws. And Muir Laws is an educator, a naturalist. He has started, in my opinion, a movement for nature journaling. The Wild Wonder conference that was given last October, and then I attended again in June, this past June, was an inspiration to so many, and he is an inspiration to so many. So I kind of attribute his inspiration to this journey that I am on at this point now. And I feel that all of us, and John certainly is doing it, is spreading the word. The next slide, Catherine, please. And this is his, I bought his book, and so I will bring that up again later on if you want to write down his website. His website is amazing. It'll connect you with the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference, which I don't know when the next one is scheduled, but so far there have been 2. And his book and his website is a wealth of information on nature journaling and inspiration. So I've actually shared with him what I'm doing here in Pacifica, because I think it's a wonderful community that's happening out there. And so this is one reason I'm sharing it with you today. Next slide, please, Catherine. So after attending the conference, my partner and I, Bevan, and you saw a picture of him earlier on when you saw a picture of the two of us at Devil's Slide on the slide that Catherine showed. He's also a volunteer. We decided to take the little camper van, which you can see in the sketch in the picture, and it's not about fine art. It's about recording your observations, becoming curious. And so we took a trip up the North Coast, and we went up to Humboldt State Park, Patrick's Point, which I know they're changing that name. And I'm not quite sure what that is going to be, but and Prairie Creek. And so it's about doing like a mini landscape, which you'll see the one with the trees and then the sun going down. I was sitting in the redwoods, and then recording some of the natural artifacts that are around you. So it's a combination, as you saw earlier on the previous slide, combination of words, your thoughts, your observations, and sketching, but it's not about fine art. And so I did several nature journal pages on this trip. And one of the things that I thought would be, I would like to move forward and share nature journaling with other people. And I thought at the county park, perhaps maybe I could organize a volunteer group, like a reading group. And so that was in the back of my mind. I returned to Pacifica, and it was then contacted by our executive director of our art center, Cindy Abbott, and she asked if I would do a workshop on nature journaling. And I thought, I know how to teach, but I was still in the discovery process myself and learning. But I thought perhaps by doing a workshop, it would force me, which I think that's true for many of us, to learn that skill better, develop it, and then actually might be able to then organizing a volunteer group at the park. So I accepted that challenge, and then did research on supplies, which I will be talking about a little bit later in this presentation, and did a workshop in last May and June. And Catherine, the next slide, please. And this is an example of some of the nature journal pages that I produced in the process of kind of demonstrating that I knew what I was going to do in the workshop. And so, as you can see, nature journal pages take on a various form. There isn't a set format. In some cases, you may see a mini landscape, adding details, comments about the metadata, which is the date and the time and the location, and maybe the geography of an area where you are. And then one of my favorite pages in this particular page that I'm showing of several journal pages is the one with the circles. This is from one of the workshops that I did with the Wild Wonder. And by taking small details, drawing a circle or a square, or there's no rules, and putting in those small details and really looking closely. And that's what you do with nature journaling. You become curious. And so sometimes a nature journal page will kind of catapult you into, you ask the question, as John Muir suggests, I wonder, I notice, it reminds me of. And so you may just go online and do some additional research. So it's an opening for a lot of other journeys that you may take within that natural world. So Catherine, the next page, please. So I did organize a workshop at the Sanchez Art Center. This is the Rotary Plaza. This was last spring, and when we organized it, and the Sanchez was open and starting to do classes. All of the other classes that they scheduled were webinars or Zoom presentations like we're doing now. Mine was outdoors, and I thought, I was kind of curious as to whether it was going to fill up. I had no idea. I did a lot of research, as I said, with the supplies. I included a kit, so everyone had some basic supplies, a journal and some pencils and a pen and that sort of thing. So they came, everything was provided to them. And the class filled up. We even had a waiting list. So I was surprised. Some of the other sessions did not fill up during the spring, the other sessions that were webinars. So it was a 2-day workshop, 5 hours per day. We had 2 weeks in this case apart so people could practice their nature journaling. And I was overwhelmed by the positive feedback. And I don't think it was my teaching per se. I wasn't teaching fine art. I wasn't teaching drawing skills. I was teaching introduction to nature journaling, providing them with the tools, with the supplies, with the concepts. And so it was a success. So the feedback I got kind of catapulted me into then starting which is a volunteer effort on my part, of the nature journalers, we call ourselves, in San Pedro Valley Park. 6 of the 8 people that took the workshop that you see the image of right now actually joined the journalers, and we are now meeting this following month. We meet monthly, actually meeting the end of this month, and this will be our fourth meeting. And it's great. I'm facilitating. I don't want to lead it. And I see it eventually as being like a book club where we just kind of meet monthly and we show up and we nature journal. Right now there are 7 of us, including myself. We don't want it to be more than 10 or 12 because that could be a little bit, who knows? I don't know where it's going to go exactly, but we are following COVID standards. We meet outside of the park, and eventually with our visitor center opens and things change, we might be able to meet inside. With inclement weather right now, we're going to meet in our patio area at our next meeting on October 28th, which we might have rain. We were supposed to have rain last night. We didn't here in Pacifica. I'm in Pacifica, by the way, California, and which is just south of San Francisco. And we didn't have rain, but we're supposed to have rain. So many of you who are maybe viewing from away from California, you know, we're in major drought conditions. Next slide, please, Catherine. So here are some nature journaling guidelines for a page, and you saw some of the pages before. Record date, time, weather, and observations. It's also called metadata. And your location, the name of the place, or the description, page format. Think about what you're doing. So before you do your journal page, and it can be either a landscape or a portrait, vertical or horizontal. There are no rules. Remember, this is your journal and it's about your observations. But think about organizing your page. And for me, that's part of the fun of it. So then to sketch the area or the subject, put in a mini landscape. You don't have to. Sketch the area or the subject, and then adding the close details of sketches and details of the plants or animals that you might see there. And it's okay to cheat. If you don't know how to draw something, I carry, not always, but I use John Muir Laws, his guide, and it's wonderful because it has all the natural history of the Sierra Nevada. I do a lot of hiking. And so if I don't know how to draw something, a bird or something, I'll look at a guide. There's nothing wrong with that. And also as a photographer, I often take photographs of places. So let's say I don't have my journal with me. I'll take a photograph and I may go at home and I may then sketch from that photograph. So remember, there are no rules. And be curious and ask questions. The questions will lead to other questions, and then those questions will lead to other questions, and builds up your curiosity. And then using descriptive words, poem, or haiku. I do write some haiku, and it's a very simple poem, poetic form, and it's a wonderful way of furthering your journaling beyond the pictures and beyond just your words. So the next slide, please, Catherine. This is a sketch that I did from the Rotary Plaza, where you saw the image of the workshop in session. And this is an interesting sketch because, again, it's not about fine art, but it's about sketching your observations. And this strawberry tree, this was last spring, I sketched it. And I noticed, if you'll notice that I have a question on the bottom, the 2 branches are dying. Why? And I described the tree, it was a beautiful tree, and it has a lovely bloom on it. There's a picture of the detail. I show a leaf, and I show the little red dot you can see, and that's one of the fruit that is produced on the tree. And I organize my page, so I like to kind of outline things like this is a rectangle that outlines some of the descriptive words. So as I said, part of the process of kind of organizing your page. But we have found out since then that tree, with the last workshop that I did this past week, the tree has died. And between the time I did this, I did do some research to find out what was happening. And evidently I connected with the gardener that manages this area of our art center. And they don't know what happened, but the trunk was dying back in the fall. That was why those bottom branches were dead. And then now most of the tree is dying. There's just a little bit of growth left. So the journey that a nature page can take you on is you don't know where it's going to take you. So Catherine, the next image, please. So what are the tools? Excuse me. So I keep it very simple. I have a little shoulder bag, and in that shoulder bag, I carry a journal. I have some colored pencils. I also carry a small travel set of watercolors, but I like my colored pencils because they're simple. I can blend the colors. I use a mechanical pencil, has an eraser on it. So I like having that. And then I use a micron pen, which is a permanent marker. So oftentimes when I do my sketch, I then will add micron pen to kind of outline it, add details. Some people say that black outlining is not a part of nature. It's not found in nature. For me, it works. And so again, it becomes your personal process. And I think it's important to explore it, see what is out there. I would recommend going to John Muir Laws' website and look at some of his images and some of his instructional videos. There's hundreds of them actually, and then develop your own style. I also carry a chair that has a little strap and I can put over my shoulder. I carry a big hat, water, maybe some snacks. And if I'm going, I usually have a little tick key in case there are ticks around, which we have on our coast here. So that's it. So I can just take off and keep this in my car and I can nature journal almost anywhere. So, and we do have a question and answer session afterwards. So if you have questions and answers about supplies, or I'll have the answers maybe. So if you have questions, please write those down and ask those at the end of the session here. Next slide, please, Catherine. So this is our San Pedro Valley Park nature journalers. We formed as a group, and as I said, about 4 months ago, and I started out by giving them a questionnaire as to how did they see this group forming? How many people did we have? What did they want to see? And so that questionnaire was very helpful for me. And so this is to the left is Carl and Melanie and Jane. And two of these members are friends of San Pedro Valley Park. And so we're connecting with the friends as well as pulling in outsiders and perhaps maybe making some people who are not familiar with our park more familiar. And here are some samples of some of their nature pages that are behind them. Catherine, the next slide, please. Here we are in the park itself, and San Pedro Valley Park is one of, Catherine, what do we have, 25 parks now?
24, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and in my opinion, San Pedro Park is a fairly small park, but it's nestled in the back maybe about 3 miles from where we're on the coast, but 3 miles from the coast. We have a grassland, a woodland, and we have a riparian area. And then we have a chaparral area. So we have a lot of diversity. We have some fairly long trails. We have some short trails. So it's a park for everyone. We have picnic areas. And as I said earlier, I think it's the gem or the jewel of the San Mateo County Park System, but maybe that's because I'm biased. As a teacher, I took my students here on field trips, and I did a project involving steelhead trout. So I have a long-term connection with this park. And now my nature journaling is connecting it even more. So we're meeting outside. And what is interesting, we all decided that we'd like to have a prompt. And so for every meeting, we have a prompt that they can nature journal to. And so if we can have the next slide, Catherine. So this was an interesting activity that we did. And usually we start our sessions by just spending about 5 or 10 minutes just being still, just listening to sounds, looking and seeing and not talking, or maybe even not even moving from our spot, but just observing for 10 or 15 minutes. And then we share afterwards. And it's just kind of sets the scene for the next couple of hours that we're going to be together. And it's amazing the diversity of people's observations, even though we're sitting in one spot, how people and what people see is and what they hear and what they think about is so interesting. This particular activity is one of John Muir Laws' suggestions for activities. It's called a sense of place. And so what everyone did after our little meditation and sharing what we had done in the previous month, everybody went out and found 3 items. You could get more if you wanted to, but 3 items, brought them back. And those 3 items what they were journaling was how did those 3 items connect them to the park and gave them a sense of place. And as you can see, in some cases, they wrote about them, they drew them. And so again, it's not about fine art. And that's one of the difficulties that I found people had in the beginning of the workshop that I had, the 2-day workshop at the Sanchez Arts Center. It's like at the end of that first day, it was like, okay, share your journals. Well, I think half the group set them down and half of them did not. They were, kind of, oh, my picture isn't good enough. But by the second workshop, everybody just put them out there and it was like, hey, this is fine. And I think that's the other thing, and it's done for me too. For me, it's worked as well, because when we do art, we want it to look good and we want to be good at it. And we want people to say, hey, that's lovely. But nature journaling allows you to not be perfect at what you're doing, because it's about the curiosity and it's about the observation. One of the things I want to point out is the eucalyptus leaf that you can see, the long, slender leaf. And I'm sorry, my phone is ringing in the background, and so we'll just ignore that. But anyway, so what I discovered through my process, a lot of people don't like eucalyptus. It's an introduced species here in California. They brought it originally for windbreaks and thinking that it was a good quality wood for building. This was early on in the 1800s when we were having this, gold rush in California. Everybody was coming to California. Eucalyptus came as well. And they found out it was not good wood for planting. It ended up forming great windbreaks. And actually they brought it even to South America, all the way along, I think, the west coast of the Americas. But it has become an invasive species. There's a beauty about it. And of course, in Australia, it's a wonderful tree and it's the livelihood for the koala. But here it's become invasive and it actually is a fire hazard, although there is a beauty about it. But one of the things, if you look at that long, narrow, dark leaf, that's the leaf off the mature leaf. And I was noticing, again, this is where nature journaling takes you. I was noticing that the new growth or some of the younger trees had a totally different leaf. And I thought, is it the same species? Well, I did some research and yes, it is. I haven't been able to find out totally, and Catherine, you might know, but I don't know why totally that leaf is different. But I think a lot of it has to do with photosynthesis, because the smaller, wider leaf that even is a lighter color, perhaps maybe brings in more light, and the process of photosynthesis is more successful with those larger leaves as the early growing stage happens with the tree. And then as it matures, that leaf is a dark green leaf. It's slender, it's not as soft, and so it's a different leaf. But that again is an example of where nature journaling takes you. So next page, please, Catherine. One of our prompts was spirals in nature. So the question I'm asking all of you is, and you can answer this to yourself at this time, what do you think is the most common shape in nature? I'll give you 15 seconds to think about that. The most common shape in nature. Okay, you've got your answer. Well, yes, spirals are one of the most common shape in nature, but the hexagon is the most common shape in nature. And I got curious because we decided the spirals would be one of our nature journal prompts. And actually Jane, one of the people you saw earlier in the picture, she was doing her last minute nature journaling, which oftentimes we do when we have a class or something, we haven't done our homework. And so she was rushing around. She went to the nursery, and the owner, she was talking about plants, telling her that she was nature journaling. And so the owner took her in the back and showed her all these succulents. And so there was spirals. So Jane came in the next workshop and she said, what about spirals? So for the next month, we did spirals, and we brought them in and we shared them. And it was amazing, the spirals that we found. I had never really looked at the center of a sunflower, or those flowers that fall in the sunflowers family. Take a look, the next sunflower or in that family you see, look closely at the center. That is a spiral. And then also we know the chamber nautilus is a spiral. Snail shells or spirals. The tendrils off the vine, and we have a plant in our park called wild cucumber. It's tendril spiral. We have a fern that's called a 5-finger fern. It spirals. The little fiddle necks of fern spiral. So I'm going to challenge you after this presentation. Go out and find spirals in nature. You're going to be surprised. And also the Fibonacci numbers is, and just check it out, go online. And there's a mathematical process to a lot of spirals as well. I'm not going to go into that, but it'll take you on a journey. And our session about spiraling ended up going far beyond what I even expected. So there you go. Next slide, please, Catherine. So I'm going to share with you some nature journal pages. This is one of my first pages that I did in my, I've got several nature journals going, but this is one of the first pages that I did of just flowers in my backyard. And so while I was doing the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference last spring, I would go out and also do flowers in nature, or actually in my backyard. And it was amazing, the diversity of flowers. And so this was a very simple nature journaling page. And it's something that if you are interested, I would suggest do that. Pick up a journal, doesn't make any difference, the type of journal. Although I will say that if you are going to do watercolor, or if you are going to do watercolor pencil, it is best to get something that is of at least a 90-pound weight paper. And Canson, C-A-N-S-O-N, is the journal that I use, and I'm going to actually show it. You can see it right here. So this is the journal that I use. It's called Canson. And but there are a lot of journals out there. Just go into an art store and you're going to be overwhelmed by the amount of journals. But I would recommend that if you do watercolors or watercolor pencils, get at least an 80-pound paper. I also like spiral bound books. There are others that are out there. John Muir Laws has many of them people. This is kind of a fabric bound book. It opens up. When you're opening it, you have to have it wide. I like the spiral bound book. This is probably longer lasting, and it'll probably last a lifetime, and mine may not. But then that's my preference. And again, too, you have to decide on what works for you. So again, this might be a good nature journaling subject. Just go into your backyard and sketch the flowers, or sketch the trees, or sketch the birds. Again, it's not about fine art. Next slide, please, Catherine. This was a page that I did when my partner, Bevan, and I were driving up the coast. We just stopped off in Pescadero, which is just south of us here in Pacifica. And we just sat there and had our lunch. And so I took out my nature journal and I did this little mini landscape. Water is not easy to do. So, do what you can. I saw lots of people on the beach. I put in these little figures that kind of look like people. They're not great drawings, but you get the sense of it. There were rocks there. And so you get the sense of water coming in. And then also there was a lot of bird life. We have a lot of bird life on the California coast. the brown pelican, the Brandt's cormorant, the western gull. So I sketched those. And again, too, if you're not sure, go take a look at a field guide. And then at that point, you're going to learn about the bird more as you try to sketch it. And John Muir Laws, if you go to his website, he has some wonderful, wonderful techniques about sketching birds by starting out by just doing 2 or 3 circles and then developing from there. So learning to sketch, many of us say we can't sketch. Well, it is a process. The more you do it, the better you get at it. So Catherine, the next slide, please. So what do you need? You need an interest in nature. You need curiosity and a few tools, a journal, a pen or pencil, maybe watercolor pencils or paints. And as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of small watercolor paints that sets you can get, colored pencils, you can get a small set. I would recommend you start out with a small set. And then some brands, you can buy individual pencils and you can then expand, but you don't want to be carrying a lot of supplies because you don't want to maybe be carrying a lot of weight because you may want to go for a hike. And you can nature journal anywhere, in the park, in your yard, looking out your window. So you can nature journal any place. Nature journaling is fun, meditative, and also a wonderful way to share with others. I have a friend who was early on, she was one of my colleagues when I was doing a lot of environmental work along with my teaching, and Jerry now is diabetic. And so she's at home. I'm going to go over to her house and we are going to nature journal out her window. And so it can be done anywhere. And I'm finding it also as I get older, I do a lot of hiking, but and for some of you, you may be finding yourself in the same situation. I'm not as capable as I once was, and I'm going to become less capable as I get older. But I think nature journaling is going to be my partner. And so if I cannot go to nature, I can simplify it and I can bring it to myself. And sharing it with others is also a great way of you're expressing yourself through your nature journaling. So the next slide, please, Catherine. So again, it's not about fine art. It's about you and your time in nature. I'm sitting on the root, on the kind of extension of a stump of this cottonwood tree in the Eastern Sierra. So it's a time to just sometimes just and maybe sit and not nature journal, just to be there. The other day I went out into my yard and there were just a lot of things going on and I kind of need to sit down. I brought my nature journal out, but instead I just watched the butterfly going from one plant to the next. And then the question was, why is that butterfly choosing that plant and then going to the next one? Why is it flitting around? So be curious, ask yourself, I wonder, I notice, and it reminds me of. Next slide, please, Catherine. So again, I recommend that you go jot down this website, johnmuirlaws.com. I recommend going to his website. He is sponsoring the Wild Wonder Conference. There is no, I'm not a sponsor for that, but I just think it was such a wonderful, wonderful experience. And his website is amazing. So there is so much to learn from him and from his website and from his messages. Next slide, please, Catherine. Why nature journal? Slow down, discover, and see. And this is a quote from John Muir Laws. But to differentiate, John Muir, which many of you have heard about, of course, was the naturalist who was born, who has been around for, and still keeps inspiring us for over 100 years. He started the Sierra Club. So much of Yosemite National Park here in California is attributed to John Muir. And so one of my favorite quotes from him is, in every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. And I can kind of relate that to nature journaling. In every walk and using your nature journal, one receives far more than you seek. So thank you very much. And so hopefully we have some questions. Thank you, Catherine, for helping me with those images.
Yeah, of course. And I also wanted to say that we did a webinar with John Muir Laws, I think it was last December, and that's recording is on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in checking out the San Mateo County Parks YouTube channel, it was directed more towards children, but I'm sure there's still lots of great information you can gather. And he kind of showed how to just sketch some birds and things. So that's a great hour to check out if you're interested, and it's on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions, please feel free to direct those now. We have a question from Yi. Can you tell us more about your class, Sharon? Oh, Sharon, can you tell us more about your class, both at Sanchez Art Center and
Certainly. The workshop is a 2-day workshop, and it's 5 hours each day. We usually start 10 to 3. And as I mentioned, I do provide a kit, and that kit includes a nature journal, includes a pen, includes a mechanical pencil, include watercolor pencils, includes an eraser and a pencil sharpener. And then I have a number of handouts that I provide. Right now, I didn't only plan on doing one workshop, and then we had interest, so we did a second one, and so we might do one in the spring, because it is something that I think people are really reaching out and they're needing, particularly at this time, they're needing this type of direction. And so for me, I guess it's become kind of a mission for me to share this, and it's giving me a lot, and it's we're spreading it out with just spreading out, passing it forward. So that's the workshop, and it's at the Sanchez, because it's a nonprofit organization. You may want to, it's a Sanchez Art Center. The booking is through Evan Bright, and you may want to check on, if you're local, you may want to check on that. We don't know if we're going to do one in the spring, but we've been charging $105 for the workshop, and that includes the about $25 worth of supplies. So the workshop basically is for 2 days for about $75, which is fairly affordable. I am going to be doing a little drop-in session at our community center here in Pacifica on November 4th, and that's like an hour and a half really mini workshop, and I'm not quite sure how that's going to look, and I'm not charging for it. It's a senior center, and I don't want to charge that for that, and I felt if I did anything longer, I kind of would have to, because we're charging at the art center. But that's going to be a mini workshop, and I'm going to learn from that. So putting it together and drop in, I don't know who's going to show up, but so hopefully that answers the question about the workshop itself.
Great. We have another question from John. How do we identify what to draw? There are so many things in nature, and should we identify sad thoughts too?
What was the last word?
Sad thoughts.
Cloud thoughts?
Sad, like
sad
sad.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Sad thoughts. Well, in terms of what to draw, I think sometimes just sitting in a place, like for example, the redwoods, and sitting in a place, spending time just looking at where you are, and then noticing things, and ask yourself questions. Why are the redwoods growing here? What's that stuff on the ground? It's called duff, actually. And it's just all the stuff they're dropping. How long have they had there? Ask yourself questions and write those questions down in your journal. And maybe it's just a whole page of questions. And maybe then decide and pick up a small, in this case, redwood cone. Look at it and maybe sketch it, and then ask yourself, why is this cone so tiny and this tree so big? So and so your thoughts And if you have sad thoughts, then write down those sad thoughts. I'm feeling sad today because of whatever reason, and let those thoughts out into the redwoods, and just say those thoughts out loud. And actually, sometimes I think it works well to say maybe people may think you're crazy, who cares? But say your questions out loud when you're sitting there. Ask them, why are you so tall? Why do you have this small cone? So ask yourself the questions, say your questions out loud, jot down your feelings, and then think about how you feel after you've done that nature journaling page. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. I think there's so much wisdom in nature that we just don't understand because we don't speak the same language. But as we take time to notice things, we can slowly start to discover things we might not have seen before.
Well said.
Leslie, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. First of all, I'm just bursting open with excitement. Sharon, you did a wonderful job. I just feel so encouraged because I'm a nature person and I don't have too many friends that really appreciate nature as I do. So I feel like kind of a lone wolf in a way. So when I heard this workshop was coming up, I got excited and got more excited by just seeing what you're already doing. And I noticed you said 11/4, which is November 4th, you're having a drop-in.
Yes, this is in Pacifica.
Pacifica, okay. And what time would that be?
We're doing it from until from 1:30 and 1 until 2:30, I believe.
Okay.
And it's at our community center, at our senior center. And so you can go on to their website.
Okay.
And check that out. It's November 4 and it's a drop-in session. And Leslie, it would be lovely to see you there. I don't, in terms of members, you may check with the senior center and tell them what you want to do. And I am certain Dana, D-A-N-A, is their program coordinator. Speak with her, tell her how you've made this connection, that you want to show up. And I have no idea how many people are going to show up. So if you show up, Leslie, that'll be great. There'll be 2 of us. So
thank you. I'm going to see if I can connect that. I work with Daly City actually.
Oh, great.
Library and Recreation. Ann Cooney is there, and but I live in the South Bay, and
okay.
I'm exploring things because I don't know what your bandwidth is, but anyway, we can talk offline. I want to see how we can maybe bring you or part of this to Daly City because I coordinate classes there. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, great.
Do I just pay the $25 fee for the?
And the drop-in session, I'm gonna provide stuff, and it's not going to be. I'm going to have some paper. I'm going to have some pencils. I'm going to have some color pencils, and so it's going to be kind of. And I'm getting the art center supplying me with supplies, and so it's a drop-in session. So don't even just bring yourself.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Very good. Thank you so much for your time and all this great information. I will be going to the Muir Laws site. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Sharon today? We'll see if anybody puts anything in the chat. You can also unmute yourself if you like. I just want to say a big thank you to Sharon. I think this is a great program that you're putting together, and I'm so excited to see how we can expand this in some of our other parks. I myself have gotten to go to a couple of workshops about nature journaling in the past, and it's just so much fun to take a break and notice what's going on around you and draw it out. So we're hoping to do things in a bunch of our parks moving forward, but Sharon's doing a great job at San Pedro Valley Park and in Pacifica. One question for the website again, is that for the John Muir Laws website?
Yes, all it is johnmuirlaws.com, and go to his, as I encourage you, go to his website, because I'm just providing the tools and the introduction, but he actually teaches drawing and sketching, and he's got such insight and he's such an inspiration. So again, I think I see it as a movement, and I think that all of us, I'm doing these workshops, and it's becoming much bigger than I thought, but I think it's happening everywhere. And it's so important in our world with what's happening right now that we connect not only with nature, but with ourselves and with one another on this level. And nature journaling is doing it.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you, Catherine, for joining our community today.
Thank you.
We'll see you again. Take care.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.